Item 2, the Customs Amendment Bill, second reading.
Second, Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the bill be now read a second time. The purpose of the Customs Act is to enable Singapore Customs, or Customs in short, to effectively carry out its mandate of trade facilitation and revenue enforcement. The Ministry of Finance and Customs regularly review the Customs Act to ensure that the Act remains up to date and in line with policy intent. The Customs Act was last amended in 2012. Since then, we've carried out another review, and the Customs Act Amendment Bill 2018, or the bill in short, aims to support policy changes on fuel taxes to improve customs operational efficiency and provide legal clarity on current policies. A public consultation exercise on the draft bill was held from 9th May to 5th June last year. MOF and Customs have published a summary of comments received and our responses. Mr. Speaker, let me now take members through the key amendments in the bill. The first set of amendments seeks to support policy changes on fuel taxes. Diesel taxes were restructured in Budget 2017 with the introduction of a volume-based duty on automotive diesel, industrial diesel, and the diesel component in biodiesel. At the same time, the existing lump sum special tax on diesel vehicles was reduced. The shift from a lump sum tax to a usage-based tax was to incentivize users to reduce diesel consumption. We have 3 amendments in the bill to support these tax changes. First, we will broaden the definition of motor fuel in the Customs Act to include diesel and any fuel that may be used to power a means of transport. The Customs Act empowers customs to enforce revenue collection and customs laws relating to motor fuels that attract duties. For instance, by law, Singapore-registered vehicles are required to have a minimum amount of motor fuel, 3/4 of the tank, when leaving Singapore at land checkpoints. This is to prevent drivers from evading payment of Singapore's fuel duties. However, the current definition of motor fuel, which these laws rely on, only includes petrol and compressed natural gas, but not diesel. With the introduction of volume-based diesel duty on diesel, there is a need to include diesel in the definition so that customs can enforce the relevant rules. So we have broadened the definition of motor fuel to include any fuel, including diesel, that can power a means of transport. Clause 3 provides for these changes. Second, we will amend the Act to clarify the processes by which customs will deal with changes to the rate of special taxes for motor vehicles. Currently, special tax is levied on diesel vehicles and paid together with the tax for the vehicle license for either a 6-month or a 12-month period. The Customs Act does not state what happens when the special tax rate is changed in the middle of a period that has already been paid for, or the current period for short. For instance, the special tax was reduced at Budget 2017 on 20th February 2017, which would have been during the current period for some vehicle owners. So we need to amend the Act to provide greater clarity going forward on the amount of special tax, on how the amount of special tax payable should be calculated when there are different special tax rates within the current period. In particular, the amendment allowed the Minister for Finance to prescribe the effective date of the new rates and the treatment for overpayment or underpayment of special tax. For example, the Minister can prescribe that any overpayment can be offset against any other tax, levy or fee payable under the Road Traffic Act in respect of the motor vehicle. And clauses 7 to 9 provide for these changes. Third, we will give authorized customs officers the discretion to let vehicles which have flouted the 3/4 tank rule but cannot U-turn at the checkpoint to leave Singapore after imposing the fine. I spoke earlier about the minimum motor fuel requirement for motorists departing Singapore. Currently, motorists caught flouting this rule at the land checkpoints will be fined, and most will have to U-turn to top up their fuel tank before they can leave Singapore. With the expanded definition of motor fuel mentioned earlier, the rule will now apply to diesel-powered vehicles. But it may not always be possible for larger diesel-powered vehicles like coaches and trucks to U-turn if they are caught due to infrastructure constraints. So for practical reasons, such motorists have to be allowed to leave Singapore while still being held liable for trying to leave Singapore without the required minimum amount of fuel. Clause 15 gives customs officers the discretion to allow this. Customs will explore imposing a comparatively higher penalty for such vehicles to maintain parity with vehicles made to U-turn. Next, I move to the second set of amendments which seek to improve customs efficiency in carrying out its daily operations, and there are three key changes. First, we will extend the time limit for the recovery of short-levied and erroneously refunded duties, taxes, or other charges from 1 to 5 years, and remove the time limit for the recovery of duties due to fraud and willful default. Short-levied and erroneously refunded duties can arise due to incorrect calculations or deliberate attempts to defraud customs on the duties and GST payable. Some cases of underpaid duties and GST may only be uncovered more than 1 year after the event of underpayment. So this change will give customs greater operational flexibility to seek the recovery of short-levied and erroneously refunded duties and GST. The revised time limit will be aligned with the requirement for companies to keep records for 5 years under the Companies Income Tax Act and GST Act, and Clause 11 provides for the changes. Second, we will extend the time limit for submission of claims for refund of duties, taxes, or other charges overpaid or erroneously collected from 1 to 5 years. Currently, Customs is unable to accept claims or refunds made more than 1 year after overpayment or erroneous collection. Such situations can arise when traders, after tallying their accounts at the end of their financial year or through audits, realize that they have overpaid duties and GST on their import permit applications made more than a year ago. So this amendment will give more time for traders to discover any errors in payment to Customs, and this will also align the time allowance in the Customs Act with that of the GST Act. So Clause 10 provides for this change. Third, we will allow the Director General of Customs, or DG Customs, to delegate powers granted to him by the Act without needing to seek the approval of the Minister for Finance. Currently, approval from the Minister for Finance is required for DG Customs to delegate any of his powers to senior officers of Customs. Some powers, such as waiver of payment and granting of licenses, may need to be delegated from time to time to ensure efficiency of Customs' daily operations. These powers tend to be operational in nature, and this amendment will streamline the administrative processes for such delegation. This particular amendment also aligns the administration of the Customs Act with that of the GST Act and the Regulation of Imports and Exports Act. These latter two acts empower the Controller and DG Customs to delegate powers without needing to seek the approval of the Minister for Trade, or the Minister for Trade and Industry, respectively. So Clause 4 provides for the changes. Next, I turn to the amendments to provide legal clarity to current policies, and I would like to highlight two key changes pertaining to collection and reimposition of duties. First, we will provide clarity that there will be collection of customs or excise duties and import GST on goods used or consumed in a free trade zone. Duties and import GST are imposed on goods imported into Singapore for use and consumption. On the other hand, transshipment goods stored in the FTZs, the free trade zones, which are designated areas at the ports and airport that facilitate entrepot trade, enjoy temporary suspension of customs or excise duties and import GST, as they are not meant for usage and consumption here. However, if these goods are used or consumed within the FTZs, then the suspension ceases to apply. Currently, the Act is worded generally to impose liability for duties and GST for any goods in FTZs that cannot be accounted for. This change will provide legal clarity that goods used or consumed within FTZs are liable for duties and GST in line with the existing policy intent, and Clause 14 provides for the change. Second, Customs will be given the flexibility to reimpose duties on goods which cease to be duty exempt based on the value at the time of importation or at the time the exemption ceases. Certain goods may enjoy duty exemption upon import and then be liable for duties later on when the conditions of the exemption no longer hold. One example is that embassies are entitled to duty exemption when they import motor vehicles for official use. But if the motor vehicle is subsequently sold to a person that is not eligible for the exemption, the duty exemption will cease to apply, and duties will need to be levied and paid on the motor vehicle. Customs currently reimposes duties on a good based on its value, either at importation or when the exemption expires, depending on the circumstances. This is determined by customs based on factors like the nature of the good and the conditions of the exemption. So this amendment will provide clarity in the Act that customs has the flexibility to reimpose duties based on the value, either at importation or when the exemption ceases. And Clause 6 provides for the change. In summary, Mr. Speaker, the bill will help customs to implement the recent tax changes on diesel and enable customs to carry out its day-to-day operations more efficiently. The bill will also provide legal clarity to current policies. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
The Customs Amendment Bill.
Committee stage, what day?
Now, sir, I beg to move that the Parliament will immediately resolve itself into a committee on the bill.
Question is that Parliament will immediately resolve itself into a committee on the bill. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that clauses 1 to 19 stand part of the bill. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Bill to be reported. Second Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to report that the bill has been considered in committee and agreed to without amendment.
Third reading, what day?
Now, sir, I beg to move that the bill be now read a third time.
The question is that the bill be now read a third time. As many as are of the opinion say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
The Customs Amendment Bill.